Welcome to Trial of the Hollywood Sex Therapist Killer, the harrowing and tragic story of Dr. Amie Harwick, who met a tragic end when she was allegedly thrown off her third-floor balcony by her stalker and ex-boyfriend, Gareth Pursehouse. Found clinging to life, but later succumbing to her injuries, Amie's death has raised many questions, with answers to be revealed in court. Join us as we dive deep into the ongoing trial of Gareth Pursehouse, the man accused of this heinous act, and as we seek justice for Amie.
Opportunity to give an opening statement, and I stated to you that an opening statement, simply put, is like a roadmap of what each attorney expects the evidence is going to show. Traditionally, the prosecution goes first. Are you prepared to go forward, Mr. Ogler?
Yes.
You may.
Your Honor, just so the court knows, juror 12 and alternate 6 switched seats for his medical issue.
Okay, very good. Noted.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The evidence in this case is going to show that Dr. Amie Harwick was murdered by defendant Gareth Pursehouse because he was obsessed with her. She rejected his advances. Not only that, she cut off all contact. And to punish her for that, he broke into her house on Valentine's Day. He broke in there with a syringe loaded with a lethal dose of nicotine. And then he waited for her until she got home. He waited there for hours for her. When she arrived, she went up to her third-story bedroom and got caught by surprise by the defendant. He immediately attacked her, as evidence will show. He strangled her. And then her roommate, who was asleep in the bottom level, heard the screaming and yelled out, "Leave her alone." The evidence is going to show the defendant panicked at that moment, took Amie Harwick's debilitated body over to her bedroom balcony, lifted her up over the balcony, and dropped her to her death. You can hear that she suffered injuries to her body. Her pelvis was shattered, liver damage, brain damage, and the defendant fled the scene. Now, this opening statement is a roadmap. It's a preview of the evidence we expect to show you in this trial. And the reason why it's good to pay attention to these previews is because when we call witnesses, we are not able to call witnesses in the order you would expect them as things happen. We're bringing in witnesses from out of the county. We have to accommodate their schedule. So you will hear witnesses who may have known something that happened later in time testify first just to accommodate their schedule. But this will help you understand the evidence and how things happen. So let's get right into it. Amie Pursehouse and Amie Harwick and Gareth Pursehouse dated back about 10 years ago. And they dated for only about a year and a half, as the evidence will show. In 2012, Amie obtained a restraining order against the defendant and ended the relationship. And then she had no more contact. Amie moved on with her life. She cut off all contact with the defendant. She became Dr. Amie Harwick. She obtained a doctorate in sexual behavior, and then became a licensed marriage and family therapist. In 2020, now we're at the year when these things are going to happen. And the way things happen is her friend, Dr. Hernando Chavez, and her were going to go to a conference. They work as therapists with the adult industry, helping people in that industry who may need therapy. And they were invited to an XBiz show. XBiz is an adult entertainment convention where they award adult entertainers awards. And as therapists, they were invited to conferences there. And she went to one on the 14th, and by going to the conference, you get to go to the awards show. It's a red carpet show. And both Dr. Chavez and Amie Harwick went there, and they were excited to network this. So you're going to hear from Dr. Hernando Chavez, who's going to tell you what happened on that day. They went to the Marriott Hotel. she'll tell you that Dr. Harwick, Amie Harwick, was excited to be there. But that all changed when the defendant was there. The defendant had been hired to work as a photographer. The defendant's actually a computer programmer, but one of his side jobs is as a photographer. And he was there. Dr. Amie Harwick did not expect that. And Hernando Chavez will tell you that he went to go get drinks for a moment and left Amie by the red carpet, and then he was called back. He said, "You better get back here. There's a commotion happening." And as he got back there, he could see that the defendant was crying, was upset, and he could see that Dr. Amie Harwick was trying to calm him down. And as he got closer, he heard the defendant tell Amie Harwick, "You ruined my life, bitch," referring to their relationship and how it ended. Dr. Harwick tried to appease him. She was embarrassed about the situation, as Dr. Hernando Chavez will tell you. She tried to appease the defendant at that point, who appeared distraught. At some point, Dr. Hernando Chavez said, "Okay, it's time for us to go. We talked to him. We need to go to the red carpet," and was able to take her away. From that point on, her demeanor changed. She was making the best of it. She was putting on a face now. She was taking photographs at the red carpet. She went and sat down at her table for the convention. And she was there, but Hernando Chavez will tell you how her demeanor changed. She was stoic. But as this award ceremony was about to end, the defendant approached her again and asked if he could talk to her. She told Dr. Hernando Chavez, "Let me talk to him," and went a short distance away to talk to him, to try to calm the situation down. At some point, within 45 minutes of that conversation, that ended, and she and Dr. Hernando Chavez left the Marriott Hotel. They went to the parking lot. And she was supposed to go to another show, but she canceled it. She said, "I'm not going there. I need to talk to you. We need to go to a restaurant where I need to talk to you about what just happened." And as they got into her car at the Marriott Hotel, she looked behind to see if she was being followed. They then go to the restaurant, and Amie tells them about her interaction with the defendant and how she's afraid of him, and how she needs to increase security at her home, how she needs to get pepper spray or something because of the way he's acting. Obsessive. Dr. Hernando Chavez offered to go with her home. She said, "No, it's okay. I'll go home on my own." And then they parted ways. This takes us to the next day. That same morning, following morning at 3:09 a.m., Dr. Harwick gets to her home and she writes an email to herself. In this email, she documents what just happened with the defendant and her fears of what can happen to her at his hands. She writes, and there's a date, January 17, 2020, at 3:09 a.m. "Tonight, I felt very scared. I went to the award show with Hernando. When we arrived, we waited in a very long line to do the red carpet. As we were waiting, I saw Gareth walk by with a camera. Clearly, he was working. I decided to ignore him and just not looking at that direction. I thought maybe he could not notice me. I'll show you another part of this email where she states, "Up and shaking violently," meaning the defendant was shaking violently when he was talking to her. "I was scared and felt like I needed to neutralize the situation. I don't think he was going to attack me in that moment, but this clearly showed me how obsessed he was. He told me that he thinks about me every day, and every day he cries. He told me he lost his job when we broke up because he couldn't work. He told me that no matter what he did, he couldn't stop obsessing over me. He told me that I was a cheater and a liar because he thought we were still together when I believed that we were broken up. He recited text messages that I had sent from this time frame, about 9 years ago. He recited the date, who they were to, and exactly what was said word for word. I couldn't believe it. I was very scared. He said he wasn't able to move on, but he's dated, but nobody with me. He said he thinks about me constantly. She wrote this email to herself. She didn't send it to anyone, as you will hear. At the end of the conversation, I told him my friend Hernando was waiting for me. I asked him how he would like to end this conversation. I told him that we don't have to be brutal enemies. I told him that we will not be friends and we will not be talking, but that we don't have to be enemies. I told him that I was genuinely sorry for anything that I did that was hurtful all of those years ago, and I told him that I forgave him. He asked for a hug, and I told him that was not a good idea. He started to cry. Eventually, he walked away. Fernando and I went towards the escalator to go towards the vehicle. So that's an email that she wrote to herself that's brought in for her state of mind, to show you what her state of mind was right after her interaction with the defendant. Well, that same day, the day after the XBiz Awards show, defendant text messages Amie Harwick. He states, I interneted your number, recognize it now, I see it, if I'm allowed. He finds her number on the internet and texts her at that point. Prior to this, you'll see that the phone records, evidence will show that the phone records from Amie Harwick, she was never contacting the defendant. And then he engaged in text messages with her. She culminates that brief interchange of text messages where he wants to talk to her, he wants to meet with her, with the following. First he states, not sure if you're done, because you said, how do we finish this now last night? But if we can meet again, she responds, I think it was really good that we were able to speak last night. I'm sure there's a lot more that you want to process and say to me. But I think that was a lot for both of us. I hope you were able to hear me last night when I said that I was sorry for anything that caused you suffering and that I forgave you for the things that you did to me. I think right now it's best to have some space, and I don't mean that in a negative way. The past is sad and triggering for both of us. I think we ended our talk last night well. We can be civil from distance, respect each other, and move forward with our lives. So that's what she responded to end this conversation with the defendant, but he replied, and you'll have these text messages as part of the evidence, so you're still just gone, which is exactly my nightmare, and sadly what I expected. Amie Harwick, just a little bit later, at around 1:22 p.m., texts Hernando Chavez and tells him, Gareth found my number online and messaged me. I told him I didn't want to talk and wished him the best, but his response was still obsessive and scary. Handyman comes tomorrow for more locks on my windows and ordered pepper spray. These statements are will be brought in to show her state of mind at the time, how she feared the defendant. She further texts, thanks, I set a boundary over text and I'm not responding after that. He keeps texting me and sounds unstable. Well, the evidence will show the defendant continues to text message her at 2 p.m. and at 6:45 p.m. and she does not respond. The following day, she text messaged her good friend Robert Koshland and more statements of her state of mind. I ran into my scariest ex last night of 10 years. He yelled at me in public and then acted really crazy and told me how obsessed with me he was. I tried to de-escalate him. Things he said were very scary. Took safety measures today, but realistically scared for my safety. My anxiety isn't bad now, just realistically thinking something could happen to me. Then you'll hear from Robert Koshland that she provided she got an app where he could follow her the location of her phone. The following day, on 13th, defendant leaves a voicemail message crying, asking to talk to her, that he has so much to say to her. Amie ignores the voicemail message and actually blocks her at that point, so he cannot have any contact with her. She increases home security, gets new locks, security cameras on the mid-level, not on the third level. And then we move on to Sunday. So at this point, she's blocked his number so he can no longer contact her, as evidence will show. She tells her friend Grace Stanley that she is going to get pepper spray. I blocked him through text message, but because his level of obsession, and I definitely don't think I'm in the clear. I have pepper spray at the house now. My roommate is on alert. I'm upping my home security. That's her state of mind at that point. She tells her roommate, Michael Herman, about her fears and to be on alert. This is the roommate who will testify and will tell you that his room is on the bottom level. The mid-level is like the living room. The third level is her bedroom. She has a home at 2086 Mount Street in the Hollywood Hills. This is a 3D image of what the home looks like. So in this case, you'll be able to know the different levels of the property and where the various rooms are that are going to be relevant in this case. So this will be her back patio, the concrete patio. Her balcony will be on the third level. That will be her bedroom. The front of the home, the garage, the media room, the TV room on the third floor, the front door, the living room, and French doors. And you'll be able to see that those French doors are recessed behind the door. The back part of the building has Michael Herman's bedroom on the lower level. There's the patio, there's her balcony to her third floor bedroom. Points out to the living room and the media room. Now, in this case, we're going to present evidence of her neighbor's property because evidence will show that that's how the defendant got to her home. So the property to the right in yellow, that is a neighbor's property. There is an empty lot behind that property that goes straight into the street behind it. You're going to hear from one of the tenants of that yellow building who lived towards the back. A week before the defendant broke into Amie Harwick's home, she installed 2 ring cameras in the back portion of that building. That's the home with the vacant lot in the back. Before we get to that, just to place the chronology here, the defendant finds her phone on January 17th. Amie blocks the defendant, and for the next few weeks, there is no contact. The defendant's not able to contact Amie Harwick until we get to Valentine's Day. On Valentine's Day, Amie goes out with her girlfriends. And she's going to go out to downtown Los Angeles. And she leaves her home sometime around 7 p.m. Right around the same time, like around 7:10 p.m., the defendant is texting Natasha Polson. You're going to hear from Natasha Polson, who will provide copies of her text messages in which she's having conversations with the defendant. And the defendant's texting her, about, oh, that's totally fine, busy woman, I'm good, just also trying to get everything under the sun. So this is at 7:10 p.m. on the date of the murder, or the date he's going to break into her home. The defendant's residence is in Playa del Rey, about 51 miles from Amie Harwick's home. Amie Harwick's home in the Hollywood Hills on Mound Street is 286. The vacant lot is right behind 2078 Mound Street. That's what the back of that lot looks like. So the next video is, we're going to present it in evidence. It's to show you what those two locations look like. Amy's home and the neighbor's home and the location of the ring cameras. The ring cameras, as the people who present evidence of this, will be significant because they will show the defendant. And in the videos that we expect to be shown to you, the defendant will be wearing gloves. So this now shows, that's the first camera that's on a pole. And here's a better look at that particular ring video. You also hear evidence that when you hold down a ring camera down for several seconds, it shuts off and then it resets itself again. Second camera, just a few feet ahead. And the time of these, when this is being done on the camera, is going to show at 8:52 p.m. Then there's another video at 8:53 where the defendant appears to be coming back towards one of the ring cameras. At this point, Michael Herman is in his bedroom on the bottom level. He is asleep, tired. And around this time, after 8:53 p.m., past 9 p.m., he hears what sounds to him like someone dropping a dish or something breaking. He's going to tell you that he thought Amie was at home and that she had dropped something. So he didn't think much of it. Well, detectives will later find, as they will testify to this, that the French doors had glass broken. Photographs were taken of the condition of the French doors, which were broken. And they had criminalists, after this crime occurred, go and take swabs if they found any type of evidence there. And what they found were these smears of blood on the French doors. You're going to hear from criminals who collected swabs from this blood, what appeared to them to be blood, and it was tested, and it came back to defendant's DNA. There was one more blood stain on the floor, and that was also tested, and that came back to defendant's DNA. You're going to hear evidence that when defendant broke into her home, that on his person he had a syringe with a brown liquid that detectives will tell you originally they didn't know what it was. That will be, after it's tested by chemists, by the FBI, that's pure nicotine in a pure form. It's a poison. You're going to hear from one of our experts on nicotine who will tell you that was a lethal dose of nicotine that if injected into Amie Harwick, it would kill her. Well, while the defendant is waiting there at the home, Michael Herman is still asleep. I want to show you what the upper level of this home looks like. There's a staircase from the second floor from the living room that leads up to the third floor. On the third floor, you're going to have 2 rooms and a bathroom. Towards the bottom of this, what's shown here, you're going to have the TV room, otherwise known as the media room. Then you're going to have a bathroom and a hallway in between that room and Amie Harwick's bedroom. And then you're going to have the balcony, and over to the left is her walk-in closet. So Amie is with her friends at this time. She's enjoying her evening, but then she's going to leave her friends at about 12:30 a.m. You're going to hear from her friends in this case. And she arrives home and parks her car in her driveway and sends a text message at 1:02 a.m. to Sarah Rollins. Send me the pics on the green couch, which she sends at 2:05 a.m. Amie Harwick will not get to see this text message, as evidence will show. So after sending that text at 1:02 a.m., Amie Harwick makes her way into her home. But as evidence will show, even officers who appeared at the scene when they were there that night missed the damage to the French doors. It wasn't readily visible as you go in through that front door. At that time, at around 1:02 a.m. that night, Amie Harwick, when she entered her bedroom, was 38 years old. Defendant Gareth Pursehouse was 41 years old. She was 5'5". Defendant was 6'4". She weighed about 118 pounds, and he weighed about 230 pounds. So there is no video of what happened on that third floor, but the circumstantial evidence that we will present in this case will show you that her jacket was found in that media room. The necklace she wore that night was broken and in the corner of that media room. That Michael Herman will testify that he woke up to her screaming and to her being thrown down to the ground, or what sounded to him like someone was being thrown down to the ground. From the staircase, he yelled out, "Hey motherfucker, leave her alone." He didn't know what was happening. He's going to tell you that he didn't know if someone had a gun or what did they have. And that in a panic, and he wanted to go get help. And he ran to the side of the home to go get help. He actually jumped over the gate that was locked and cut himself. And about, I wonder why it So this is 6 minutes after that text message from Amie Harwick that Michael Herman is knocking on the neighbor's door. You're going to hear, and I apologize for having to show you these photographs, but this is some of the coroner is going to testify regarding some of these injuries. That Amie Harwick sustained injuries consistent with manual strangulation, which was also a contributing factor to her death. She also had assaultive injuries. Injuries on her neck, particularly strap muscle, hemorrhage, are consistent with manual strangulation. Injuries of her extremities, particularly her fingers and hands, are consistent with the combination of defense and assault type wounds, suggestive of an altercation. Also, in that hallway between the media room and her bedroom, the first officers arrived found what appeared to them to be a pool of urine. You're going to hear that her fingernails were swabbed later on and tested to see if there was any DNA there. And DNA came back to this defendant, Gareth Pursehouse, as you will hear in this case. Circumstantial evidence that we will present to you will show that Amie Harwick was in a debilitated state after she had been strangled and assaulted, and that now her roommate had yelled out. And at this point, the evidence will show the defendant panicked, dragged her body to the balcony. opened the door with whatever blood he had on his gloves from having hit Amie Harwick, took her to the balcony, and threw her body over that 3-story balcony. The evidence will also show that a syringe was dropped right there at that balcony. I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. The cause of death, as the coroner will testify, is, as I said, severe damage, severe trauma from that fall, including damage to the brain, damage to the liver, the pelvis, and including manual strangulation. And the evidence will show that as Amie's body lay there on the concrete, the kitchen door would be left open, as officers would see. And there would be a path for the defendant to climb right back from where he came, as a video that we will present in this case will show, back to those ring camera videos. And that ring camera video that we will present to you in this case will be triggered at 1:11 a.m., about 9 minutes after Amie's last text. Michael Herman will testify that he heard her screaming, that he knew she was being attacked, and heard her thrown to the ground. And he said that
Did you see anything?
No.
Okay, so
I heard her screaming, and I heard her being...
All right, so I'm going to send out that somebody's screaming, okay, since you didn't see anything. You don't know if she's being attacked or you're not sure.
Yes, I know she's being attacked. I heard her got thrown to the ground.
Okay, all right, so 2086 Mount Street. Is it a house or an apartment, sir?
It's a house.
Okay. And this is, who's screaming inside?
I can't even think right now. Amie Harwick.
I mean, who is she to you, sir?
She's my roommate.
Okay. And she's screaming for help?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and your name?
Michael Herman.
And what is your callback number, Michael?
I don't have my phone. This is somebody else's phone.
Okay, would it be okay to contact you back at this phone?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. And so you're also hearing somebody hitting her? Is that correct?
Yes, I heard something like that, yes.
That's evidence we will present here. It's 911 call when Michael Herman testifies. That's at 1:14 a.m. Around this time, we'll also present evidence back to Natasha Paulson, who was previously texting with the defendant. Defendant, at about 1:57 a.m., texts her back, haha, that's funny, related to some comment she had made. So this is 46 minutes after the defendant has left Amie. He texts this woman back, ha ha ha, that's funny. Later that morning, on February 15, 2020, defendant texts another woman, Angelique Judice, who will testify in this case, and he texts her at about 10:59 a.m., less than 11 hours since he left Amie. Morning, sunshine. Angelique Judice will testify to the text messaging that was going on between them, and that she actually went over to his home at his invitation and then stayed there for several hours until he was arrested later that afternoon. Investigation. You're going to see body-worn video of how officers arrived at the scene within a few minutes. And it's going to be graphic video of Amie Harwick on the ground in her condition. She appeared unconscious. She was going into seizure, and there'll be evidence presented to you of that. Michael Herman will testify that he immediately told officers about Amie's fears of the defendant. Amie would later be transported to Cedars-Sinai, where she would be pronounced dead. Several friends of Amie Harwick identified Gareth Pursehouse as a suspect she feared. Detectives obtained the neighbor's ring camera, and detective collected Amie's phone and evidence from the crime scene. You're going to hear from these detectives who will testify as to the evidence they collected. At 4:45 p.m. later that afternoon, defendant is arrested. He's in the company of Angelique Judice, who he has spent several hours with. Photographs are taken of the defendant later that day, and he has several injuries throughout his body, including bruising to what appears to be the knee and cuts on the knee and some bruising, some fresh bruising toward the bicep. Search of the defendant's residence reveals a syringe with the same brand as the syringe left behind at the crime scene. And there'll be other items at that home that we'll discuss during the trial. The detectives are able to obtain defendant's cell phone, but in his cell phone, they are not able to find any of the messages that he sent to Amie Harwick. A few days later, after Amie Harwick has passed away, her friend Robert Koshland is going through her things to collect them for her family. He finds several journals, and in some of those journals, he finds a password for her Gmail account. He goes into her Gmail account with that password and finds that email that Amie wrote to herself. And there's one last paragraph that we will present to you from that letter, which states, "I'm pretty nervous." This is the end of her letter. "I'm pretty nervous that I'm more on his radar now. It terrifies me that he has been obsessed with me for 9 years, thinks of me every day, can't move on, cries and throws tantrums in this way. He is and focused on harming me. However, I'm hoping that this interaction and the listening and giving him time may cause neutralization in his anger towards me." This is back on January 17, 2020. Lastly, this is my last slide, ladies and gentlemen. This is my second to last slide. Detectives try to get the liquid in that syringe tested. And you're going to hear testimony that they send it to the LAPD labs and they're not able to first determine what that is. It's not a controlled substance, meaning it's not a methamphetamine, heroin, what have you. You can even hear in the body-worn video some officers who found it that night, that morning, thinking that it's heroin. They had to send the liquid from that syringe to the FBI to have a more comprehensive test. And there, the FBI determined that it was nicotine in a pure form. Then you're going to hear from our expert, Dr. Benowitz, who's going to tell you that amount of nicotine in that pure form, if injected into Amie Harwick, would have killed her. You're also going to hear that particular poison is not readily detectable, as it wasn't for the LAPD. At the end of this case, I want you to hear all the evidence of this case and everything the defense has to say. At the end of this case, the people are going to ask you to come back with a verdict of guilty as to the residential burglary, the murder of Amie Harwick, and the special circumstance of laying in wait during the commission of this murder. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counsel. Mr. Franzo?
Thank you. We have 10 seconds for a quick movement through.
Sure.
More of the trial of the Hollywood sex therapist killer is on the way. Press subscribe now so you don't miss a moment of this riveting courtroom drama as we seek justice for Dr. Amie Harwick.